Being respectful of everyone's time, I think we'll get started here. Good evening. I'm Justin Martin. I am the City of Laguna Niguel's Deputy City Manager, and trash and recycling falls under my purview. Thank you for joining us this evening to receive this organics recycling update. I want to let everyone know a little bit of housekeeping first and foremost. We are recording this session. We will be utilizing it to further educate the community post webinar session. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that. Also, you will see a part of your controls which talks about questions. We invite you to enter your questions along the way, and the different panelists will be answering those questions towards the end of our webinar here tonight. I want to introduce our presenters tonight. First, from the City of Laguna Niguel, we have my colleague Kevin O'Connor. Next, from Economics Consulting, we have Project Manager Kim Riley, as well as Director Ashley Brunyer, who will be our moderator this evening. And finally, from our city's franchise waste hauler, CR&R, we have our sustainability specialist, Rosalie Reyes, and we also have James Vergara joining us. So each of our panelists will be covering a different portion of the presentation this evening. And again, we'll be happy to answer any of those questions at the end, but please feel free to add those into the questions box throughout the presentation. So with that, I'll thank you one more time for joining us this evening for the City of Laguna Niguel's Organics Recycling Update. And at this point, I will turn it over to Kim from Economics Consulting.
Alrighty, thank you, Justin. Appreciate the introductions. Oops, didn't get quite caught up on the slides there, but there's each of us and the companies that we're working for. I'll scooch along and just dive right in. First, an introduction. So Kim Riley, as Justin said, I work for Economics Inc., which is an environmental consulting firm based in Orange County. And we're under contract with the City of Laguna Niguel. And we work with them on all things solid waste and recycling. So I'm here to talk with y'all tonight about this new state law. It is called Senate Bill 1383. And I'm so used to saying new state law, but this went into effect January 1st, 2022. So we've had a whole year of implementing this state law. The city's been working really hard on all of the requirements that are included there. So also known as SB 1383 that you see there, and it is called as well short-lived climate pollutants law. So this law is targeted at food waste and landscaping waste going to landfills, and the big goal is to capture these materials and recycle or compost them instead. Okay. So as I mentioned, goal number one is to recycle or compost that organic waste. So those are the food scraps and the landscaping waste. And I'll dig in a little bit more into what I mean by organic waste. But the first goal here is to recycle or compost 75% of that organic waste by 2025. And then goal number two is to recover 20% of edible food that was otherwise destined for a landfill in order to feed people. And what I mean by recover is this is to capture edible food before it is thrown away and instead donating to organizations that distribute that food out to individuals and the community. And so this results in feeding people instead of wasting that food in a landfill. I want to make a note that this is a requirement for commercial businesses. This is not a requirement for residents, and I'm just sharing this with you all tonight as it is one of the major goals of SB 1383. So this goal actually aims to feed almost 1 in 4 Californians that don't have enough to eat. All right. Next, we'll talk about some requirements of SB 1383, and these are requirements for the city. So the city is required to do all of these bullet point items on the screen here. So provide yard and food waste recycling service to all residents and businesses. So we have CR&R joining us tonight so that they can share about some specifics of the services that they offer to residents. And then I'll share a bit with you all about participating in the food scrap recycling program specifically. Number 2, adopt a local ordinance enforcing the state law. The city has already done this, and it went into effect at the beginning of the last year. And that rolls up a lot of the requirements of SB 1383 straight into the city's municipal code. And that's a requirement of that state law to do that. Next is to implement inspection and compliance program. This will look like maybe monitoring existing programs, and what the city is doing here is looking at programs by residents, by commercial businesses, and ensuring that they are participating correctly. This is looking for specific contamination, and then they can take that information and educate its residents and commercial businesses about better practices. 4 on this list, impose penalties for non-compliance. And actually where this starts before even penalties would be non-compliance can result in a notice of violation, which is really just a period of time that we're in right now between 2022 and 2023 of education. So the city is sharing with everyone how to participate in these programs, what items should and shouldn't get placed into each of the containers. So it's a big education period until 2024 is when those penalties or fines can be assessed. And once again, that is a requirement of SB 1383 written into the local municipal code as well. Next, establish edible food recovery program for businesses. And I'll just give a little update here, but the city has been working on identifying existing compliant programs per SB 1383, and they're going to continue educating their businesses about food recovery. And finally on this list, we have conduct public outreach, and this can look like distributing educational material, whether that's digital or physical, and then also sharing information in settings like tonight. Okay, next, let's talk about organic waste. So what does this mean? I've mentioned it a couple of times this term, and maybe you all are familiar with this term, but I wanted to share some details about it and then also include some examples for you. And organic waste is made up of these 2 items that you see here. So food waste or food scraps, I'll use those terms interchangeably, and then yard waste or green waste as well. And so food waste or food scraps, they come from your kitchen. There's lots of examples like fruit and vegetable trimmings. This can look like apple cores, banana peels, potato skins. These are the kinds of things that your average person isn't consuming. And these are the items that can get placed inside of your green cart, inside of your organics cart. Other examples of food scraps that are common are maybe like eggshells, coffee grounds. If you have spent tea leaves that are loose, those can also go into the green cart as well. Food waste also, or food scraps also includes food that has gone bad or is rotten. And this could be food that was forgotten in the back of your fridge, and maybe it's got a bit of mold on there. Things like that can also get placed into your cart. This is not only the trimmings of fruit and vegetables, but also cooked food as well can get placed in there. And then yard waste, you all might be a little bit familiar with, but yard waste or green waste includes the garden trimmings, tree trimmings, weeds, cut flowers, pruning waste, things like that. So both of these make up organic waste. All right, why organic waste? So Californians throw away about 5.6 million tons of food waste every single year. And so SB 1383 is targeting food waste for this reason, because there's a lot of this material going to our landfills each and every day. And this equates to about 30 million pounds per day. And to help put that into perspective, that's about 72,000 commercial aircraft, airplanes worth of organic waste going into the landfill every single day. So it's a lot of material. So why are we targeting food waste with SB 1383? It's a lot of food scraps that are ending up in our local landfills, which have limited space. Another reason why we are trying to recycle and compost as much of that as possible. And so what happens to food scraps that go to the landfill? The organic waste is not, it's going to get buried, and then it won't be exposed to oxygen when it's buried. And then there it's going to break down and let off methane gas. And this gas will contribute to trapping heat in our atmosphere and warming the atmosphere. And so instead, residents of Laguna Niguel can instead recycle their food scraps and decrease these greenhouse gas emissions. So here's what happens instead. So Laguna Niguel residents, you will have these green carts where you can place your food scraps and your yard waste. And the material gets collected and then brought to an anaerobic digester. And an anaerobic digester or anaerobic digestion is a series of biological processes in which microorganisms break down those food scraps and that yard waste in the absence of oxygen. And then it results in, or an end product is biogas, and that biogas can be taken and compressed and then combusted to generate electricity and heat. Or it can be processed into renewable natural gas and transportation fuels. So, for example, CR&R collection vehicles that you see around Southern California can use this transportation fuel that comes from the food scraps being processed. Okay, now let's bring this back to your household and what this all means. But the average family throws away between $1,300 to $2,300 worth of food every single year, and that's a lot of food that's going straight into the bin. Maybe it's stuff that we, as I mentioned earlier, forgot about in our fridge, or leftovers that we didn't eat, apples or other produce that went bad before we had a chance to eat it. And so I want to throw out a couple ways that we can reduce this amount, but we can do that by buying food that you and your family know that you'll eat. You can incorporate maybe a weekly cooking night where you take any miscellaneous items in your fridge, or maybe older or smaller portions of food items in your pantry, and take those and throw something together. Sometimes folks can get really crafty. I know in my household, if I have just maybe little bits of things left, I might type into a search engine online just the name of 5 ingredients and just see what comes up, and that will take me in a direction for cooking and preparing a meal. We can also make sure that you eat your leftovers, whether that comes from a restaurant if you go out to eat, or food that you cook at home. Other tips that I like to share is to wash some produce like grapes or berries, like strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, right before you eat them, instead of doing it ahead of time. And this just helps prevent some of the bruising that may cause you to not want to eat it, or later down the line some mold growing on it. So that's a nice tip. And then for stuff that is starting to go maybe a little bit mushy or close to going bad, but not quite and still good, but you know you're not going to get to it, I love to utilize my freezer space as well. So chopping up some vegetables that I couldn't get to, if it's mushrooms that I just bought too many of them and didn't put them in recipes throughout the week, I might chop those up and throw them in the freezer and then throw them in a soup a week or a month from then. So those are some tips I wanted to share because I'm very excited about this myself, and I know that I'm always learning from my peers and friends and colleagues about ways that I can reduce food waste in my home. So I wanted to share with you all. But it's inevitable. We are going to have some food waste. As much as we try to eat our leftovers, as much as we try to use things up, freeze things, we will have food scraps or the produce, parts of produce that we don't normally eat or would not like to eat. And so with this, you can take those materials and place them into your green bin, as I described before. And I gave some examples just earlier. So here you can even see some examples. We've got the rinds of lime, maybe some apple cores in there, and the green bits of the strawberry that sometimes people don't like to eat. So Laguna Niguel, we've had a food scrap recycling program since 2019. And this is the green bin that you have at your home. This is a bin that, or excuse me, a cart that you can use for food scraps and your yard waste. You can collect them together and then place them, collect them together in your cart. And you should have received a kitchen pail. This came from the city NCR&R, and it looks similar to what you see pictured on the screen. It's a small 2-gallon kitchen pail that you can leave either on your counter or under your sink, and you can collect your food scraps there. And make sure this pail doesn't end up on the curb because it would make it very difficult for CR&R to collect. What you need to do once you collect those materials inside of this kitchen pail inside is you need to take that and dump it into your cart outside. And so here I'll give you some tips for collecting some food scraps in your kitchen. You can drain any liquids that you have down the sink. It's an easier way to collect things. You don't want that pail to be sopping wet when you throw it away. It'll just make everything a little bit more pleasant. Collect any parts of fruits and vegetables, as I mentioned earlier, that you don't normally eat. Leftover cooked food that is moldy can go in your pail too. So it's kind of some repeats of what I shared with you earlier, but I just want to share them again to give you an idea of things that can go into your container. Placing the kitchen pail that you have in the refrigerator is a nice way to collect it, and it'll stay kind of nice and fresh before you deposit the contents into your cart outside. Another cool dark place is ideal as well. So if you don't have refrigerator space, I mentioned under the sink works well, or maybe in a kitchen cabinet, something like that. And yeah, I think those are all of the tips that I wanted to share with you all about the collection of the food scraps. One other note on the pail, I actually don't have one of these at home, and if you don't have yours, or if you seem to misplace it, there's a lot of other options. You know, you could pick one of them up from a local store. There are pails like this that are very similar that are sold in big stores. But you can also reuse containers that you have at home. For a while, I was using a big Tupperware container and just throwing all of my food scraps in there before taking it out to the cart. You know, you could use a big, like a paper bag in your refrigerator. You can use a big mixing bowl. I've even done that before. If my other container gets all filled up, then I'll just take a bowl and I'll, when I'm chopping up stuff for dinner, I'll just throw stuff in that mixing bowl and then leave it in my fridge until I take it out and empty it into the cart. So just throwing out some additional tips for you all there. It's always nice to peer share if you guys have ideas about it. You know, we've got Q&A that you can drop your questions in, but if you do have you know, some tips to share with your neighbors, then we would love to hear them. And with that, I'll wrap up my section of the presentation and hand it off to Kevin with the city.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate everyone taking out of their time this evening to join us tonight. I'm happy to share with you some highlights of the organics program here in Laguna Niguel. In Laguna Niguel, all single-family residents have a 3-cart system, with your green cart being your organics cart. If you live in a multifamily community, an apartment complex, condos, you may have either a cart system or a shared bin system. It just depends on the property that you live in. As Kim mentioned, we began rolling out this program back in 2019 for our single-family residences, knowing that the state would be requiring all cities to implement organic waste collection. By taking a proactive approach, the City of Laguna Niguel has been a leader in Orange County, and we hope to continue our success as a community with all of your support. With that, we have fully implemented the organics collection program in our single-family residences and are roughly 90% done with implementation at multifamily properties. Commercial businesses, including restaurants, are required to participate in the program as well. Some things to keep in mind when placing food scraps and yard waste into your organics container is that we do not want to place any types of plastic, including plastic bags, in your organics cart. Doing so contaminates the organic stream and makes organic waste more challenging to process. We also don't want to place pet waste or palm fronds in our containers as well. Pet waste has a certain like nitrogenous component that makes it challenging to decompose, and palm fronds get stuck in a lot of the machinery when we're processing organic waste. The city has taken an education first approach. As Kim mentioned earlier, the city is required to implement some monetary fines and enforcement mechanisms. The city has and continues to use education first, and we're not going to use any monetary fines for non-compliance until we're required to by state law beginning in 2024. We encourage everyone to contact us if you have any questions. Our dedicated sustainability specialists at CR&R are here to assist you. We are here to assist you so that we can implement this program fully and successfully. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rosalie Reyes from CR&R, who will be discussing some of the services that CR&R Incorporated provides. So Rosalie.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can y'all hear me fine? Okay. All right, well, thank you so much, Kim and Kevin, for providing all those highlights about a lot of the things that we've been working on in the past few years, especially with organic recycling. And Kim also with all those beautiful tips on how to best use your pail, as well as how to put that into your organics cart. So my name is Rosalie Reyes. I am a sustainability specialist with CR&R. Also with me on the panel is James, who's my co-coordinator. We're just going to go through some services that we provide as a waste hauler contracted by the city, and any additional questions we can save for the end, as well as we can provide contact information after the meeting, as well as our website is a great tool to look at as well. We can continue. So as you know, there is a 3-cart system that has been mentioned. Our program with the organics cart, with putting not just your green waste, but your food waste into that cart, started a couple years back, which we're really grateful for, because we understand that there is a transitional period for everyone to start getting used to sorting their waste in the respective carts. The trash cart is that black cart, typically with a black lid. The second one is a recycle cart, whether that's a blue lid or phasing out the brown carts soon. And then some of the items that we've already talked about includes the organic and green waste in the green cart or green cart itself. And then joining the company, I also learned that CR&R was actually one of the first haulers in the nation to start the 3-cart system. Back then, it wasn't a cart. I used to just be those little baskets. So I think it's very cool that this was already forward thinking even back when the start of the company. And some best practices in placing that 3 carts into the curbside is to make sure you either place it the day before your service day or early in the morning, typically around before 7 a.m. So that our drivers can pick up your carts and its contents in each one. We would like to highly suggest that they get placed at least 1 foot apart from each other, just for better collection for all of our 3 different truck drivers and vehicles picking up each cart, as well as making sure that it's at least 3 feet away from any fire hydrants, vehicles, or any other objects that may be close to placing the 3 carts via curbside. We're done with that one. And then aside from the 3 cart system, we're aware that there are items and contents that you're not able to dispose of in each of those carts. So there are specials and additional services that we provide as well. With this slide, we're going to talk about what is hazardous waste as well as universal waste. So with hazardous waste, that can include flammable, corrosive, toxic chemicals and contents, as well as batteries, fluorescent lights, all those things. We highly recommend not to dispose of in your 3 cart system, as well as it is illegal to do so. Another aspect of that is a lot of these items can mix with other contents in the truck, and we want to prevent any possible fires and also be mindful of the driver's safety as well as en route to other homes and other commercial locations, and on the way after servicing to the landfill. And so some of the items that I mentioned that you can drop off, there are locations in the County of Orange. You can go to those websites or call that number provided, as well as Laguna Niguel Sea Country Senior and Community Center has, providing batteries drop off as well as City Hall. And then to address the universal waste pickup, that's going to be complimentary 1 time a year. You can contact our customer service for that type of special pickup. And you can also, again, take these items to your local landfill free of charge. Other items that you may not be able to put into those carts because they are larger than the cart itself, we refer to them as bulky items. We have that collection via curbside as well. So items that are not able to fit within your automated carts and require maybe, assistance from someone else as well. And then for residents, there are 3 collections per year that you're able to utilize. And each of those collections, you'll be able to have 4 items per collection. So that can include an old couch, something that you won't be able to transport maybe in your regular vehicle to donation or another location, something large as a desk as well, other large containers, as well as if you have bunches and bunch of bundles of yard trimmings and let's say a bunch of cardboard as well that you can't fully fit in your recycling cart. And it's just other appliances and things that obviously probably can't go into and fit into the carts system is appliances and e-waste that have Freon. This can include fridge, dishwashers, washing machines, and other electronic waste can pretty much include anything with the circuit board, battery, or power cord. And again, it is illegal to dispose of this. Going back to my former comment that it's also for safety for everyone, for the driver, and, anyone surrounding that truck as we go en route to other locations as well as the landfill. So we can go ahead and legally dispose or recycle these items by you contacting us to assist you with that. And other special disposal is going to include sharps. So where do needles go? UNR currently doesn't provide that disposal of the items. However, we are aware that Laguna Niguel Sea Country Senior and Community Center do collect those, as well as other collection centers that was mentioned in the previous slides. We are also aware that these items can be collected in a puncture-proof container and recycled through the local pharmacies. All right, and then our compost giveaways, there's going to be at least 2 of these happening in the springtime and November in the fall, where we give compost away to residents, typically in South Orange County. There's a bunch of other cities that participate and residents come to get that. And a big highlight of this is all of everyone's communal efforts to place all of their green waste and food waste for us to compost as well. So it's kind of going back to you and closing that circle of utilizing some of that waste and for you all to utilize as well in different ways. So thank you all for doing your part with sorting your trash to the best of your ability. And then thank you so much for everyone attending. I know this is probably not the most exciting topic, but I'll go over and give it to Kim and Kevin to sum it up.
Thanks, Rosalie.
Thank you.
All right, I will leave some of this on the screen for you all. Some useful contact information, web pages, just resources in general here that are very helpful. Just reminders of some of the topics that we covered today. We've got Sierra in our customer service line that's there as well if you have any specifics. And then of course the Laguna Niguel website, there's some good information on there about specific organics, recycling, anything trash recycling related on our website. And then once again, as Rosalie had mentioned, the Orange County Waste and Recycling hazardous waste centers, you can find that at oclandfills.com or give them a call and they can help you dispose of some of those items Rosalie was talking through. So just a little bit of additional housekeeping. After this, or the next part of this presentation, the next part of this presentation will be a Q&A. So if you have questions, go ahead and drop that into the question box. You should be able to type those in. We will read through some of them, or we will read them to the group and then address them to the crowd. After Q&A, we will, after this entire presentation wraps up, there will be a follow-up email that will be sent at a later date, just to summarize some of the stuff that we shared with you all and include some resources for you too. So you have it here on your screen and you should be getting something in your inbox as well. This is the time, if you have them, anything related to trash recycling, hazardous waste services with CRNR, specifics about SB 1383, throw your questions down and we would be happy to address any and all of them.
Okay, so far no questions, but
Actually, I see a few of them, Ashley.
Okay.
The first one was, are apartment complexes required to provide compost bins for their residents?
That's a great question. I'll take a first stab at that one. So Kim here with Economics, the consulting firm. Multifamily residents are required to have food scrap recycling services for their residents. The access that you should have should be, available services throughout your complex. I can give an example. The complex that I live in is a very large multi-hundred unit, and for a little while we only had one very small cart for the entire complex. And so a little difficult. It's a very big, so hiking about maybe half a mile from the furthest corner to the other furthest corner to place your food scraps, which I didn't mention before, but you can maybe gather. There's a lot of moisture in some of this material, and some of it can get heavy. So a little difficult. I would say access there is not the best, and so it is required for your property to provide that service, and to provide reasonable access to that service as well. So if you've got 10 enclosures with trash and recycling, but you haven't seen your food scrap recycling cart, which we had on the screen earlier, but it's that bin, that cart with the bright green lid, very noticeable. Reach out to your property manager and let them know you really want to have this availability.
And then, does anyone have anything else to add to that question, or should we move on? No? Okay. Our next question is for CR&R. When you say no plastic bags, does that also include compostable plastic bags?
That's a great question. So plastic bags, other than compostable bags, are not accepted. So we typically recommend compostable bags because it's just a lot easier for cleanup and also collection. So to prevent your individual food waste pail as well as your actual green organics cart not to mix a lot of those things as they decompose. So compostable bags are accepted.
Great. And then our next question is.
Or Kevin, can I add something
absolutely.
to that? I don't know if I missed it, Rosalie, but what you can look for, you can purchase these at major stores. What you can look for is a little symbol on there on maybe like a box that it comes in, but it'll say BPI certified, and those are compostable bags that that can be used for the program.
Yes. And just to clarify for somebody who had difficulties hearing Rosalie speak, all that she just said was that yes, you do not use plastic bags, you only use compostable plastic bags. And Kim just added that you should look for the BPI logo on the container. Our next question is to confirm, organics cart is the same as a green waste trash can. Yes, they're the same thing, it's just different wording for it. And then our next question is for CR&R, can bones be put in food waste?
Also a great question and frequently asked. We typically don't recommend bones because they are a lot more dense compared to other items like vegetables, as well as, let's say, pits of fruits. So we try to suggest not to put large bones in there, or bones at all for that matter.
Great. And then something else that I hope Kim can add for us is if you could talk a little bit about why we use, how this is going to be monitored, the inspection, and what goes on behind that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the monitoring that is occurring actually has begun already, and the city has worked with CR&R to include this in their contract, that CR&R representatives are responsible for conducting this monitoring effort. And so they are going into the field and surveying residential and commercial business residences as well as commercial businesses, those services that they have. So there are basically what we call lid flipping of observing the contents of a container and then indicating what materials are inside, kind of like a percentage. So this can look like at a residence, your 3-cart system, trash, recycling, and your green organics cart, observing what is inside of those containers, and then just taking a note. So it's a survey of existing programs. And then same sort of thing happens as well at businesses. So those that are required to have the food scrap recycling cart, it'll be the 3 system as well, the trash bin, the recycling bin, and then that food scrap cartload bin is going to be observed. And I mentioned earlier that the purpose of this is to identify, or one of the purposes is identifying contaminants. And this is helpful so that the city will know how to target educational efforts in the future. You know, if CR&R is finding a lot of plastic bags, like we mentioned earlier, that's how we know that those biggest contaminants are, that those plastic, I shouldn't just say plastic bags, but any sort of plastics, plastic bottles are found, plastic bags, plastic like cutlery, plates, things like that. Palm fronds was the other big one, and as well as the pet waste. Those were things that Kevin had mentioned. So utilizing that monitoring so that we can obtain information to share back out with the residents and businesses about how to improve their participation in the program.
Great, thank you. I see one more question, two more questions. How do you know if a specific item, such as a Costco chicken plastic container, can be recycled? Are any items that have the recycle triangle able to be recycled, or is it a certain label they're looking for?
I guess I can answer that one. That's a great question as well. With plastic heavily, prominent in a lot of things that we have, we do accept plastics with a little triangle 1 through 7. So if it has that, most likely you will be able to recycle it. Another good thing that we like to reference is how solid the actual plastic is. If something is a little too flimsy or very thin, most likely you probably won't be able to recycle that, especially if it doesn't have the triangle with the 1 or 7 on it. So something that's pretty solid, pretty firm of a plastic item, I would say put it into that recycling cart.
Great, thank you.
I hope they heard me this time.
Yes. And then our next question is, can we wrap food waste in a newspaper before putting it into the green cart?
Yes, I will say with paper, we're still going to be able to, even with people being educated about sorting, there are going to be some things that just end up in where they're not supposed to. So we'll be able to sort some of those items. In terms of the newspaper itself, it's not going to be heavily affecting the, bunch of green waste or food waste compared to other items like plastics, like we mentioned. So yes, that will be acceptable.
Great. And then just can you clarify one more time on what items are allowed in the recycling? There was a little bit of confusion on that as far as what they should look for on what is and is not recyclable.
Yeah, so easy indication is going to be if the item itself has a triangle, the recycling triangle with the numbers 1 through 7. That is items that we accept.
Great, thank you. So look for the numbers 1 through 7 on recyclable goods to see if it's acceptable. With that, I'm not seeing any other questions. So I just want to take a moment to thank our panelists for joining us today. I appreciate you taking your time to be here. I'd also like to thank everyone in attendance. I know that everyone's very busy, so we appreciate you joining us this evening. We will be posting this recording on the city's website, and we are always available to answer any questions you may have. My contact information is on the screen, as well as on our website on our dedicated webpage. So with that, I'm going to ask our panelists if they have anything else they'd like to mention. Otherwise, oh, sorry, just a couple more questions just popped up.
We'll take them.
Yeah, just yes, to the question, we will continue promoting this program and get more information out there on our website and social media, and we'll distribute educational materials. All right. So with that, I'm gonna wrap up and close and just thank everyone for being here. And we look forward to answering any questions you may have. So everyone please have a good evening.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.